cause that we're reclaiming. They wanted to. And so there was a hue and cry in the country, and that conference didn't come on. Eventually, we are now on slide 6. January 2021, we have Alex Kofi Donko and his compatriots saying they've opened a resource center to promote LGBTQIA+ activities in Ghana. The onslaught on our traditional values was clear. Let me state unequivocally that if we are here today, it is because a certain Alex Kofi Donko and his friends, supported by the EU ambassador and what have you, said that they are about to promote these activities, which are targeted fundamentally at our children and the next generation. So I stand here mainly on behalf of the youth of Ghana to say that our understanding of our cultural and historical context does not fathom this kind of thing happening in this country to the extent that our children will get into such practices. Now, the question we must ask ourselves is, what benefit will such activities bring to us as Ghanaians? So far, not one single benefit has been articulated, except probably the unique enjoyment of certain sexual preferences by a certain group of Ghanaians. Next slide. So we submitted 4 memos. I would like to start slide 8 by quoting Article 35 of the Constitution. It says that Ghana shall be a democratic state dedicated to the realization of freedom and justice, and accordingly sovereignty resides in the people of Ghana, from whom government derives all its powers and authority. In other words, ultimately, it is what Ghanaians believe should happen in this country that matters most. Next slide. In Article 35(6)(d), and I want to position the fact that we are not here by chance. It's not that there's a favor. There's an obligation that Parliament is satisfying in inviting us here. Because in Article 35(6)(d), it says that government, you know, all the branches of government, you have a responsibility to afford all possible opportunities for people to participate in decision-making at every level in national life. And so, this is also part of that process of ensuring that we influence the final decision that comes out. And this August House has a responsibility to reflect the majority view, the collective view of Ghanaians in this matter. Next slide. The general theory of law and states indicates that legislation that promotes the collective ideal is valid, while legislation that deviates from this collective ideal is invalid. The legitimacy of any good policy or law is based on the extent to which it reflects the ideals and aspirations and wishes of the collective. The source of all authority is in the consent of the majority of society. We are talking about democracy. And even in research, we know that the smaller the group, the more subjective the result. The larger the group, the more objective. And so as Ghanaians, we have thrown ourselves into the context of saying that we want the majority to take a decision, understanding that there's more likely to be an objective conclusion of the matter when the majority are the ones espousing a position. The question we should therefore be asking ourselves, what is the ideal aspiration and wish of the majority of Ghanaians concerning this matter? That is the question. Prof. Prempe is not here, but the CDD group did some research. And the research showed that 93% of Ghanaians said no. Whereas you would like to interpret it as saying that it means that there's an intolerance of this group. I think that that's not the interpretation to give it. The interpretation is not about the people as much as the practice. And we need to constantly make that distinction between the person and the practices, because that is what Ghanaians are against. Because we live with these people, and you don't find us fighting them every day, giving them blows, trying to kill them or slaughter them. The majority of Ghanaians are not engaged in that. It means that we are willing to have them around, just that the practices are an issue. And if this is anything to go by, 93%, that should give us a sense of what the ideal aspirations of Ghanaians are in this issue. I want to lay out a few important facts. First, the issue of LGBTQ rights being trampled upon. The UN General Assembly has determined no such LGBTQ rights. And we challenge anyone to show any document where there's a UN resolution that covers it. The current attempt to pass the comments by some UN special rapporteurs as resolutions of the UN binding on its member states is fraudulent. It's absolutely fraudulent. I'm not sure why we're even having this discussion. People are confusing us. There is no UN resolution on this matter. Again, LGBTQ sexual preferences or choices or practices are fundamental human rights. Fact is that fundamental human rights means that the thing is essential, is vital, is inherent, is indispensable. Seriously? That these sexual preferences and orientations and practices are essential. We are saying they are vital. We are saying they are indispensable to all of us as humanity. What are we talking about? These practices are not shared by 80% of Africans. If you take West Africa, Senegal, 98% say no. Liberia, 95% say no. Ghana, 93%. There's nothing fundamental about this. We cannot describe them as fundamental human rights. Because they are not essential, they are not vital, they are not inherent. And I'll be proving that when I get to the science. They also say the bill is a hate bill. Seriously. Discipline and tough love are well-researched ingredients for successful personal development. Renowned researchers and authors like Professor Daniel Goleman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence, have, through research, indicated that actually, that's why we talk about adversity intelligence, adversity quotient, that these issues of life, when you get through them and you go through the discipline of life, you turn out to be a better individual. So, this idea, and Mr. Chairman asked about why I think we're looking at the issue of sending people to prison. Prison is primarily about reformation. It's not primarily about punishment. Well, primarily we put you there to manage you so that we are hoping that the processes and systems there will turn out a better individual by the time we return you to society. Otherwise, there will be no point in even starting that venture. Because it will mean that by the time you're coming back, you are worse off. It tells us that our systems are not working. It is not about prison. Prison is primarily about reformation. So, and when they say it's a hate bill, don't forget that we have at least 5 clauses, 4 of them, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, looking at these persons and saying, how do we support them? Is that a hate bill? Next slide. So, clause 20, access to medical help or treatment for the accused. Clause 21, flexible sentencing. Somebody asked that question. Is it custodial sentence? No. We give the opportunity to go to, if it's community service, right there. My challenge is to lose that many people have not read. It's right there, flexible sentencing. Prohibition of extrajudicial treatment. Making sure that the rights of these individuals are respected. And we also identify, somebody said, I think it was Sheshe who said, we have lumped together intersex questioning in this group. No, we noticed that, actually speaking, they should not be part of that umbrella. And so we've pulled them out in one clause, 23, and said, look, let's assist them. If they're still questioning their identity or who they are, help them. The intersex persons, there's a genuine biological issue. Let's address it. Let me get into the science. So, science and scientific research have powered the... I'm going to speak to it very soon because there are hormonal assessments done. The chromosomes and the hormones can be assessed and draw a conclusion. So science has propelled us as humanity. And new science explanations of phenomena help us draw valid conclusions of issues affecting us. So once we have science, we don't have to just take what we say at its face value. Especially when we can test their claims scientifically. And in this instance, we are able to test. I'm a scientist, first degree biochemistry. I move on to management and development consulting. The ultimate way to establish the veracity is to research it. So let's see what the research shows. First, is there a genetic basis for homosexuality? Significant studies have been conducted into this. And by the way, our memo is here. We have over 50 references that we can check to support what we have put in it. Book at the colleagues 2020 agreed that the associations between existing biomarkers are also small that in effect, when you take them together, they don't account for the majority of variants in sexual orientation. Ghana et al., 2019, investigating genomes, and this is the Human Genome Project, the largest single ever research project in the world. And they looked at 500,000 individuals. And we do research. First human rights baseline as part of the team. 2,500 Ghanaians across the 10 regions of Ghana. This is 500,000. At the end of that, this is a global research. It demonstrated that culture and environment, these are external to the individual. Culture and environment account for 75% of the sexual behavior or orientation you choose. It means what's around you, what you grew up experiencing. Ultimately, the findings show that factually, there is no gay gene. These findings oppose arguments that sexual behavior orientation have a basis in genetics. And the conclusion is therefore that LGBTQIA plus proponents cannot claim that they were born like that. I show for you the Harvard magazine. This is 29th August 2019. Titled, "There is Still No Gay Gene." Harvard Science magazine. Now, if no one is born gay, as the proponents of that community would have us believe, the decision to be gay or lesbian or bisexual is a choice or preference. No individual, therefore, has a justifiable basis to claim unique gay or sexual orientation rights because I was born like that. You get my point? That's the argument. If science does not back this, then there's nothing unique about it. Otherwise, everybody with an alternate preference will begin to say, this is my right. And I heard others say that here. Other honorable said it. That very soon you go down the slippery slope of everyone saying, how I feel like, I want to do this, therefore, it's my right. That's the picture I'm showing you there. Very soon, those who smoke crack, weed, what have you, they're all going to say, this is my right. And how are you going to argue against that? Indeed, even the legitimacy of the human rights framework as a universal framework is put into jeopardy by this kind of thinking and logic. Because if you don't have criteria that defines what is fundamental human rights, and you expand the scope to include all of these things, very soon, the framework itself, as a governance framework to keep us safe, well, it's thrown out. Let me talk about sex being binary. The sex of human beings is binary. Scientific research has established this beyond doubt. And I'll be giving enough examples. Male is XY. Female is XX. Occasionally, there are abnormalities which result in the external genitalia having you have two. Okay? And we'll describe that as indeterminate at birth. However, whenever there's a situation of indeterminate sex, we run tests. There's a genetic analysis that's done. It looks at two things: hormonal levels and chromosomal types. So we want to find out, do we have more XY, which will say that it's male. So they will do the test. The blood samples will show you have more XY. More XY than more XX says that you are actually male. So it doesn't matter the physical observation of the genitalia. Then they'll do the hormonal test. Do we have more testosterone or estrogen? By the time we've combined those, we're able to tell that this individual is actually male, but may be having spikes in estrogen. So you start giving him hormonal treatments that require more testosterone over time so that you can manage the condition and you are fine. There has never been a situation where the doctors, and normally they use a multidisciplinary team, and that's the problem with some of our proponents. Okay, so I was answering Chairman's question, Nisha, how do we do intersex? Yes. So the genetic analysis that's done by a multidisciplinary team, urologists, gynecologists, and pediatricians, they will come together, have the blood people do this, and the results will help them determine what they should give to you as a medical, treatment moving ahead. Now, There are people who claim, and so I've put a slide on the right. I won't call any names before my honorable here says that sticks to the text. Look, science is very clear. And science shows that whether you look at the animal kingdom or the plant kingdom, there are only two types of gametes that are generated. In the animal kingdom, the male has smaller gametes than the female. In the plant kingdom, it's the same two. There is no, across all the species in animals and plants, there is no third gamete. So anybody who says life is not binary, in fact, the statistical probability that this is natural is so low that you must know that this tells you that something happens in the universe. That across all the animal kingdom and plant kingdom, there are only two types of gametes. So this issue of several other types of genders and sexual, male, female, and something else. I have 5 minutes. Let me get to my core arguments. Medical arguments. Now three. Okay. So in our paper, the global research shows that persons in the LGBT community are 30 times more likely to have HIV/AIDS. Indeed, the U.S., and it's just that I don't have time, I've quoted that. The U.S. Center for Disease Control 2010 shows that the rate there is, in MSM, is 44 times more. 44 times more. There's increased anus and rectum puncture. I'll give you the data here and the resources. Let me quote this for the women. The Gay and Lesbian Medical Association website states this. Lesbians have the richest concentration of risk factors for breast cancer than any subset of women in the world. Reduced life expectancy. Let me read a book, Homosexuality and Politics of Truth, American Psychiatrist and Psychoanalysis. Jeffrey Santronoff says that homosexuals lose 25 to 30 years of their lifespan. And I could go on and on. I even get into the data on medical systems. So I've listed for you mouth and throat cancers, anal cancers, substance abuse. There's a higher prevalence in this community. And the fact that as homosexuals, many of them are heterosexuals, means that they transfer all of this, including human papillomavirus, syphilis, and what have you. On the psychological impact, we have unscientific gender identities, 64 of them, irreversible gender transitions, confusing litany of pronouns. These days, in some countries, obstetricians don't have the right to write that you're male or female when you're a child. They say you must become an adult before they write that down. Gender dysphoria, anxiety, child sex abuse. Let me give you some statistics. Ghana's healthcare system does not have the funds to support this. Our per capita, if you look at health, in 2018 was $78, compared with $10,623 for the US, $4,315 for the UK. In fact, my professor, Professor Bagbin, was just telling me that recent studies in the US show that $25,000 is what is needed per annum, per person engaged in this. $25,000. What are we talking about? We'll be overburdening our healthcare professionals. Our ratio at the moment is 1,000 to 1,000 population, 0.1. The places where they are now accommodating this, they have about 2.6, 2.8. Look at it, the UK and US. Our total bed capacity per 1,000, 0.9. Those places, 2.5. 2.9. We must learn our lessons from the drama unfolding in the US and other countries. Let me get to my conclusions. In conclusion, contrary to the views expressed by the advocates for this LGBTQI A+ agenda, sex is binary and scientifically assigned at birth by the presence of male or female genitalia, or in rare cases, we do a genetic analysis. After studying 500,000 citizens of the earth, there is no evidence that there are gay genes. If there is no gay gene, there is no unique case for such a thing as a gay basic right or fundamental right. With over 46 terms and counting that describe the various sexual lifestyle orientation, these are unscientific ideologies or concepts people have come up with. There are so many scientifically documented medical complications arising from these alternate lifestyles that this community should not be engaged in trying to promote it, let alone us embracing it. There are extremely huge costs to society, and there are no known public benefits, except perhaps the 10 minutes of pleasure for some people. This is absolutely not the kind of legacy, honorables, that you want to leave for this country. So please, do not buy into the intellectual dishonesty being propagated that the UN has proclaimed LGBTQI plus sexual lifestyles or preferences as right. There's no document that shows that. Let us not be deceived. There's nothing fundamental, nothing innate, nothing inherent, nothing inalienable, nothing vital, nothing essential, nothing indispensable about sexual choices and preferences or practices. Nothing. LGBTQIA+ is an expensive lifestyle. Ghana's economy is incapable of sustaining it. We do not have the fiscal space. We are even borrowing to take care of healthcare needs. Ghana beyond aid. After we have invested in free SHS, then we're going to use more money to come and do what? Go and borrow to come. Doesn't make sense. Don't throw out our pride and our values for the practices, choice, and lifestyles whose impact on the Ghanaian society are demonstrated, evidence-based, will be medically, psychologically, economically, and socio-culturally negative. We recognize that this process you engage in will clearly result in amendments that will enhance the bill, and we embrace it. We are curious about the basis for the invitation extended to Amnesty International, UN office, etc., to present to this august house. We don't know that they have representatives here. We are not sure of their locus. We want to register our objection to that. We recommend the passage of the promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values to protect our youth if we are really interested in the future of this country, and to prevent huge economic costs and health costs to our nation, and to maintain the cherished values of this nation. Mr. Chair, I thank you to the members. God bless you, God bless Parliament, and God bless Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. We move straight away to the next presenter. That will be Ghana AIDS Commission. Are you also going to do a PowerPoint presentation? Okay. Ghana AIDS Commission, please. You have 20 minutes.
Honorable Chairman, honorable members, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
On behalf of the management of Ghana AIDS Commission, HIV and TB service providers, funding partners, I wish to thank you sincerely for giving us the opportunity to appear before you and speak to the memo we submitted on the promotion of proper human rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2021. My name is Kwame Anyimadu, the Director General of Ghana AIDS Commission, and I'm here with some of my directors, Mr. Cosmos Ohina, the Director of Policy and Planning, Dr. Fred Nana Puku, Director of Technical Services, Mr. Insian, Director of Finance and Administration, and some of our stakeholders, workers, and of course, Mr. Labi, who is the Acting Director of Research, Monitoring and Evaluation. Mr. Chairman, I would like to emphasize that we are not here to speak or argue in favor or against the bill. We are only here to draw attention to some potential risk that this potential risk to the national HIV and AIDS response if this bill is passed in its current form. We are taking this position not to argue in favor or against the bill in the context of the mandate of the Commission. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to take this opportunity to remind us about the object and mandate of the Commission. The object of the Commission is to formulate policy on the HIV and AIDS epidemic and to direct and coordinate activities in response to the HIV and AIDS. And the functions include, 1, to formulate policies and strategies on HIV and AIDS and determine program priorities. Provide high-level advocacy for HIV and AIDS prevention and control. Provide leadership in national planning, supervision, and support of the national HIV response. Plan and coordinate activities in relation to the national HIV response. Mobilize, control, and manage resources available for the achievement of the objective of the Commission, and monitor the allocation and utilization of resources. Number 6 is foster linkages among stakeholders. 7, generate strategic information to influence policy, strategies, planning, and the use of resources. 8, promote research and dissemination of information on HIV and AIDS and documentation of persons living with HIV. And the last one is monitor and evaluate programs of the national HIV response. And our mission is very simple. It states that to promote effective and efficient policy formulation, coordination and management of the national response to HIV and AIDS in partnership with all stakeholders. And our vision is to have Ghana become a country where HIV and AIDS are eliminated. Mr. Chairman, in line with its object, functions, mission, and vision, the Commission undertakes many activities in order to prevent, control, and manage HIV and AIDS in the country. For the purpose of this forum, I would like to mention a few strategic ones. Number 1 is that the Commission develops national policies which are reviewed periodically based on current knowledge and strategic information. It also develops a medium-term strategic plan to guide the implementation of the national response. And both the national HIV and AIDS policy and the 5-year strategic plans are founded on public health and human rights principles. And from what I have read about the mandate of the Commission, it is quite clear that the Commission does not implement any HIV activities. By its mandate, the Commission supports and coordinates the activities of many and diverse implementing partners of the multi-sectoral national response. The Ghana Health Service, National AIDS Control Program, Christian Health Association of Ghana, Muslim and private hospitals provide clinical services, while the ministries, departments, and agencies, metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, private and public enterprises, faith-based organizations, and NGOs provide workplace or community-based services to prevent and control HIV in the country. And the work and activities of these organizations are the ones the Commission coordinates. Mr. Chairman, science and data show that key affected populations, such as sex workers, injecting drug users, prison inmates, men who have sex with men, and transgender, are disproportionately affected by HIV. And I think a number of people have used different data in arguing for or against this bill on the basis of their implication for public health. But I would like to say that these groups of people, which we call key affected populations, we don't know them by the terminologies that are used in the bill. We call them key affected populations. They form a core group whose sexual partners serve as bridging population who spread HIV in the general population. Therefore, the cardinal public health principle requires that HIV must be effectively controlled in the core group and the bridging population in order to protect the general population by providing high-impact prevention, treatment, and care services to these core groups and their sexual partners. In this respect, the National HIV and AIDS Strategic Plan prioritizes services targeting the key affected populations in line with Ghana's universal health coverage and international commitments to leave no one behind. However, the activities of these groups are criminalized in many countries, including Ghana, making them highly stigmatized and hard to reach with healthcare services because the criminalization drives them underground and prevents them from accessing health care services that they may need. As a result, service providers use peer educators who are trained members of the key population community to reach out to them. Mr. Chairman, surveillance data of the Commission show that in 2017, there were 54,759 men who have sex with men living in Ghana. 54,759 men who have sex with men living in Ghana, representing 0.72% of the adult male population aged 18 years and above. Of this number, 9,857, representing 18.1%, were found to live with HIV, whilst 67% of them tested positive for herpes simplex virus 2. HIV prevalence of 18% in men who have sex with men is more than 3 times the 5% threshold at which the epidemic grows exponentially. And it is therefore instructive as we consider this bill to recognize the public health implication for this. And this point has always been used either for or against the bill. But the truth of the matter is that the number of people, men who have sex with men in the country who live with HIV represent only 2% of the HIV population in the country. Another truth is also that HIV in the country is driven not by heterosexual sex, not by homosexual sex, but by heterosexual sex. Because heterosexual sex accounts for 72% of new infections of HIV, whilst men who have sex with men and their partners account for about 7% of new infections in the country. And so we have to recognize that this is so because people, men who have sex with men in Ghana, about 52% of them have female partners. We will say they are bisexuals. And therefore, in considering this bill, we need to recognize the implications of all the clauses in the bill for public health and public interest, which is recognized in the 1992 Constitution. Mr. Chairman, the Ghana AIDS Commission and its partners, especially the service providers, are not in any way and do not in any way undertake any of the activities that this bill seeks to prescribe. However, the implications of the bill have far-reaching consequences or implications for the work we do to eliminate HIV and AIDS in the country. Our national strategic plan aims at ending AIDS by the year 2030 and ensuring that 95% of people living with once we achieve that, we will be on track to eliminating AIDS. And why is it so? Because antiretroviral treatment is not only a prevention tool, but it gives us the opportunity to end HIV as a public health threat in the country, because when one is virally suppressed, he will not develop AIDS and die, and will not be able to transmit the virus sexually to his or her sexual partner. So the purpose of the memo is to seek amendments or exemption clauses on the following grounds. One, the 1992 Constitution recognizes the sanctity and dignity of life of every person, including criminals. Good health being an essential prerequisite for the well-being of a person implies that the supreme law of the land guarantees, or at least recognizes, access to health as a fundamental human right of every Ghanaian. Two, the bill criminalizes non-LGBT plus persons, groups, and organizations whose activities may be deemed as supporting, funding, promoting, and advocating LGBT activities. HIV and TB service providers and the activities they carry out may be construed in this respect. Donor funding for the HIV response covers HIV and TB services for men who have sex with men and transgenders. These health services have nothing to do with the activities the bill seeks to prescribe, but may be construed to be if the bill is passed in its current form. Donors will withdraw their funding if they are criminalized by this bill. HIV program is largely funded by donors, and the withdrawal of their funds will certainly jeopardize the HIV response. Number 4, the bill in its current form has far-reaching implications for achieving the mandate of state institutions such as Ghana AIDS Commission, Ministry of Health, that procures the medicines, condoms, and test kits and other commodities used for the HIV-related management of HIV-related conditions. Ghana Health Service, being the implementing agency of the ministry, would provide services to all manner of people, including men who have sex with men and transgender. And they will also be found foul of this bill if it is passed.
3 minutes to wind up, please.
NACD, which coordinates the health sector response, SHRAG, which has the role of tracking and reporting abuses that are meted to persons living with HIV and key affected population, will also have the same challenge. And so, in considering the bill, the Commission, Mr. Chairman, we want you to consider the issues raised on each of the clauses in the memo to ensure that that does not undermine the mandate of any state agency, and also be supportive of implementing partners such as NGOs across the country to deliver services to all Ghanaians so that we, by the end of 2030, eliminate AIDS. So I would like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, once again. The details are in our memo, and we have cited all the clauses and their implications for the work of state institutions, faith-based organizations, NGOs, and the private sector who work with us to ensure that we effectively control HIV and TB in the country, and eventually eliminate HIV and make it an issue of non-issue of concern in this country so far as public health is concerned. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I think we have one or two, so we'll listen to the presentation and then we'll take the questions. So if we have United Nations Office of the Resident Coordinator, UN Office of the Resident Coordinator, if you are here. Right, thank you. Is Amnesty International here? Amnesty International. So this will be the last presenter then. Right.
There is a PowerPoint here.
summary statement before you show the PowerPoint presentation. The chairman and members of the Parliamentary Committee, honorable members of Parliament, other persons present here, ladies and gentlemen. I bring greetings from the United Nations and express our appreciation for the opportunity to be able to make a presentation here today. Ghana is one of the most progressive democracies, certainly in Africa, and arguably in the world. That this weighty issue is receiving this careful, deliberate, and inclusive consideration by the Parliament is an additional feather in Ghana's cap. The extent to which all those with a stake in this matter are given space to air their views in a collegial manner is both remarkable and admirable. We are gladdened that this has set the tone. Within the context of very able other Ghanaians making presentations, which we are also eminently proud of, all of them, the presentation from the UN focused on the following. One, our role as repository and custodian of international laws and treaty bodies, a number of which Ghana signatory to. Please leave the presentation where it is. I'm not here recording. Go back to the cover slide. Our accumulated knowledge and evidence from a global footprint and network of UN agencies. And in Ghana, there are 32 agencies, 21 of which have and another 11 who have programs here. And our mandate to promote sustainable, inclusive development that leaves no one behind, as ensconced through the SDGs and supporting Ghana to meet its treaty obligations. Our presentation is also mindful of the fact of Ghana's sovereign rights, self-determination on the one hand. But alongside that, Ghana's active and legitimate membership, ownership, and support for global consensus through the United Nations, as evidenced by its signature to a raft of international laws and treaty bodies, and its membership, currently and for the third time, on the UN Security Council. It should also be noted that Ghana's president serves as co-chair of the UN SDG advocates and champions. Our presentation and submission was and remains tagged as advisory based on this discussion, based on all the evidence and considering the full weight of all the submissions here that promote, protect, and safeguard human rights and promote a culture of non-discrimination, which the Global Committee of Nations stands for, through the resolutions agreed at the UN, and mindful too of Ghana's place positive in the world and its own stated and laudable ambition to protect and promote the rights of all its citizens and its desire to take its rightful place in the Global Committee of Nations, not just on paper, but in practice. We reiterate, as we did in our submission, our offer to provide additional expert advice and support to this honorable House as it deems fit to assist in the decision-making on this weighty matter, and indeed have experts available online now, should this be deemed helpful. I will summarize our submission now, which includes a detailed submission which we made, as well as an annex of the views of the 10 independent expert mandate holders earlier presented to the government of Ghana, according to agreed UN protocols of which and to which Ghana has cooperated in the past. I will now turn my attention to the actual presentation itself. You may now move the slides, please. So this actually sets out the basis upon which we are engaged in this conversation. Of course, Ghana's constitution enshrines commitment to respect for international law, treaty obligations, and adherence to the principles of the United Nations. Ghana has ratified the following treaties: the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the Convention on the Elimination and Discrimination Against Women, Convention on the Rights of the Child, Convention Against Torture, the Africa Charter on Human and People's Rights. And a number of provisions in the bill appear to be inconsistent with the treaties ratified by Ghana. Next slide, please. Ghana has made commitments to ensure no one is left behind in advancing towards the realization of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the SDGs. Ghana has made commitments at the United Nations Universal Periodic Review to take steps necessary to protect lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex persons from violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. To take measures to fight against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. We'll also make this presentation available. The universality of human rights and the African Charter. Ghana adopted the 1993 Vienna Declaration and Program of Action on Human Rights. All human rights are universal, indivisible, interdependent, and interrelated. States have a duty, regardless of their political, economic, and cultural systems, to promote and protect all human rights and fundamental freedoms. The African Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights has emphasized that the African Charter on Human and People's Rights prohibits discrimination of an individual on the basis of distinctions of any kind. The same charter has expressed alarm at acts of violence, discrimination, and other human rights violations committed on individuals because of their actual or imputed sexual orientation or gender identity, including rape, physical assaults, torture, murder, arbitrary arrest, detentions, extrajudicial killings, executions, forced disappearances, extortion, and blackmail. Next slide, please, yes. Reduction of all forms of violence, really, some of the provisions of the bill appear to encourage or coerce persons to undergo treatment, therapy, or surgery to modify their sexual orientation, gender identity, or physical intersex traits. These procedures are being condemned by the African Commission and the UN as abusive, harmful, and unethical, violating the rights of freedom from torture or ill treatment, particularly harmful to children and adolescents, leading to severe and lifelong physical and mental pain and suffering. Some of the provisions of the bill appear to depict LGBTQI persons as ill or disordered. The World Health Organization has clarified that being LGBTQ is not a disorder or a disease. LGBTQ indeed are a natural part of human diversity in all regions and cultures throughout history and across the world. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the UN have highlighted that characterizing LGBTQ as ill is the root cause of the violence and discrimination that many of them face. Some provisions of the bill that criminalizes LGBTQ persons appears to conflict with the human rights to freedom of arbitrary detention, the right to liberty and security of the persons, the right to equality before the law, equal protection of the law, and to privacy. Some provisions have been found by the African Commission and the UN to contribute to perpetuating stigma and discrimination, legitimizing prejudice, exposing people to hate crimes, police abuse, harassment, intimidation, blackmail, torture, family and community violence, and to perpetuate discriminations in health, education, employment, and housing, and negatively affect public health by impeding access to health and HIV services. I think this point was made just by the last speaker. and a lot of the detail is in presentations. Some provisions also appear to criminalize public access to information, the work of journalists, human rights organizations, teachers, and many members of the general public who support human rights in conflict with Ghana's treaty obligations on freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and association. The Africa Commission and the UN state that they categorically reject arguments that restrictions to the rights of LGBTQI people are necessary to protect public morals, health, or the well-being of vulnerable people. The Africa Commission has called on states to ensure that human rights defenders are able to work in an enabling environment that is free of stigma, reprisals, or criminal prosecution as a result of their human rights activities, including on the rights of sexual minorities. And the UN Secretary General has expressed concern at reprisals and intimidation against human rights defenders for their advocacy to protect the rights of LGBTQ people. I'm almost at the end. In health and education, some of the provisions of the bill appear to restrict access of persons to health care and criminalize the work of teachers. UNAIDS and the Africa Commission on Human Rights has noted that punitive legal environments drive gay people underground and hinder the access to uptake of HIV prevention, testing, treatment and care, putting at risk Ghana's commitment to end the global HIV/AIDS pandemic and review discriminatory laws. UN member states, including Ghana, have also identified civil society, networks of people living with AIDS, with affected or most at risk of AIDS, including LGBTQ persons, community participation and community-led efforts, including community-led delivery, as key components of achieving the end to AIDS by 2030. Young people who are perceived to be LGBTQ are disproportionately affected by bullying, violence, and harassment in school from classmates and teachers. The UN has found that censorship and restrictions not only violate human rights, they place young persons at greater risk of harm by encouraging discrimination and restricting access to information. As I've said earlier, the United Nations stands ready to provide any support that may be deemed useful to the Parliament of Ghana, the Government of Ghana, and any other national relevant stakeholders in the promotion and protection of human rights to all people in Ghana. And as we had stated earlier, our full submission, which is 25 pages long and contains a lot of detail and statistics which I won't repeat or present to you here, alongside that of 10 global independent experts, which has earlier been submitted and is also annexed to that document, which provides plenty of data, I think is here. Honorable members of Parliament, we do have on hand the independent expert on sexual orientation and gender identity available online if you'd like to hear from him as an expert. And as we have said, we stand continued across the board. The United Nations, of which Ghana is a member and owner, Ghana is also the UN. We stand here to support in any way that we can as you take your decision in this weighty matter. Thank you very much.
We were expecting to get a presentation from Amnesty International, but they seem not to be here. Is there any other body we invited and it's not here? Hey, it's here that we haven't heard. Okay, so that is the last presentation. Thank you very much, sir. So we'll take questions now, and I want your questions to be based on clarification and be brief. We'll take it from one of the sponsors first.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, I have a few clarifications I will seek from the Ghana AIDS Commission and the UN Office of the Resident Coordinator. Listening to the Ghana AIDS Commission, it was made clear that they do not speak for or against the bill. They basically came to make their views known. In their memo to the committee and the presentation, they cite Article 21(1)(a), which talks about freedom of speech and how this bill curtails that freedom of speech. I want to find out if they have vetted their mind to 21(4), the same 21 that they quoted, 1(4)(c), which gives basis for restrictions, including public safety, public health, and public morality. And how, again, in their memo, they make reference to the fact that the bill is going to curtail the work of SHRAJ, because SHRAJ is supposed.
Honorable members, there's a UN rep that would want to speak to us via Zoom. So, yeah, so, and they put him on it. So if they, yes, so if we can hear him, technicians, if you can connect him through. Yeah, so I'm here to help. I'll represent you here, so don't worry. Okay, so technicians, if you are ready. So sir, if you can hear me, you can introduce yourself and then go ahead. If you can, please unmute yourself and okay.
I can hear.
You are still not hearing him. Maybe it's from our end technicians.
Can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes. Wonderful. Mr. Chair, my name is Victor Madrigal Borlos. I am the United Nations Independent Expert on Protection from Violence and Discrimination based on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. I'm honored to appear today before this committee, and I will have a brief presentation concerning an analysis that a group of colleagues and I have made in the furtherance of our duties as appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council, an entity which of course is a constituting council of the rapporteur on torture. And mental health, working group on arbitrary detention, and the special rapporteur essentially legitimize above instances of restriction against LGBTI women and reinforce gender stereotype and discrimination, which are both as the cause and the consequence of violence against women and girls. We wanted, Mr. Chair, to make sure that within the scope of consideration of this Honorable Commission and of the Ghanaian Parliament, our analysis, which is done under the mandate of a Human Rights Council instituted very much as part of the international community of which Ghana is an active, a contributing, and a well-respected member, would be considered as part of your deliberations. We are concerned that the draft legislation appears to be the result of a deep loathing, not based on any evidence, towards the LGBTI community. All of us, that it will not only attempt to criminalize LGBTI persons, but anybody who supports their human rights, shows sympathy to them, or is even remotely associated to them. The analysis that we carried out, my colleagues and I, is available to your Honorable Commission. We understand that it has been forwarded to your Honorable Commission by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as part of the interlocution that the Ghanaian state has with our mandates, and we look forward to share an honorable member your proposal for any provide and very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate the fact that you found time to actually speak to the committee. And the committee is at the process of hearing from people like you and others. But I'm not sure if you have time to actually stay with us and follow the proceedings. We've actually had 3 presentations already, and it is time for members to actually seek clarification from the presentation, which may include yours as well. So we'll start from one of the proponents of the bill. Honorable was already on his feet, and when he's done, then another person may come in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I believe that I'd already asked a few questions of the Ghana AIDS Commission, which they took note of, so that I don't have to repeat those questions. But just for the purposes of clarity, Article 21(4)(c) of the Constitution says, nothing in or done under the authority of a law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this article to the extent that the law in question makes provision for the imposition of restrictions that are reasonably required in the interest of either defense, public safety, public health, or the running of essential services on the movement or residence within Ghana of any person or persons generally. I'm minded to read this because of the comments that were made about public health considerations by the Ghana AIDS Commission Director General, and how this bill should be viewed in light of the public health considerations. Again, the point he made about SHRAJ, that SHRAJ comes under attack by this bill because SHRAJ normally will report on attacks of people who are affected. I would rather think to the contrary, and I'll see clarity, because a clause in the bill, clause 22, which is the duty to report, imposes a mandate, a duty to report is clause 5, and clause 22 talks about the prohibition of extrajudicial treatment. So I thought that this bill would actually help in SHRAJ's work, which would lead to the stop of extrajudicial treatment of persons who are in that community, and actually imposes a jail term of up to 3 years for persons who physically or verbally assault members of that sex, of that practice. Then my question or clarification to the United Nations Office of the Resident Coordinator. has to do with what the UN's view or that office's view is of hormonal treatment and surgery that persons undertake to change their sex in light of the way it views what it claims to be therapy as illegal and harmful. What is its views about persons who decide to undergo those changes? Again, it says that the bill criminalizes the work of teachers. That was one of the things that I saw in their presentation. I want clarity on that, especially given that in their memo to the committee, they cite Article 18 of the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. I would read it out for our purposes and see if I'm reading the right document, because I'm shocked at the interpretation. 18 says, 1, everyone shall have the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right shall include freedom to have or to adopt a religion or belief of his choice, and freedom, either individually or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, and teaching. 2, no one shall be subject to coercion, which will impair his freedom to have or to adopt a religion or belief of his choice. Now 3, freedom to manifest one's religion or belief may be subjected only to such limitations as are prescribed by law and are necessary to protect public safety, public order, public health, and public morals, or the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. This is the UN, the UN's own document, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So if we're talking about public health and public morals here, is that not the basis in that very document for this bill? And then 4, that's 18.4, says, the state parties to the present covenant undertake to have respect for the liberty of parents, and where applicable, legal guardians, to ensure the religious and moral education of their children in conformity with their own convictions. This is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So if he says, as a parent, I have the right to give my child moral and religious education, how is it wrong if we are restricting teachers from inculcating beliefs in children that is contrary to the beliefs of the parent? How then does this bill flout the UN's own covenant? Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. I have listened to the presentation from the UN carefully, and I had copious reference to portions of the bill having breached UN human rights, conventions, protocols, but there's no attempt to point out these particular provisions in the bill. So, is this a case of generalization? We have made reference to provisions like clause 19 to about 25, which clearly decries exhibiting hatred towards any person who is identified to have breached a portion of the things we prescribe with this bill. That you cannot, for instance, conduct yourself towards such an identified person in an extrajudicial manner. But all the presenters who are technically opposed to the passage of the bill keep insisting that this is a homophobic bill. But clear provision says otherwise. 2, I sense a veiled threat that in considering the bill, we should have regard to the fact that Ghana is an active participant, a high-ranking serving member of the UN Security Council, and so we should have regard to that. And is it the case that when we succeed with the bill and enact it, there will be consequences on the UN scale? We need to know. I thank you.
Yeah, very similar to the sentiments raised by my colleague Roxanne. The first presenter from the UN office here in Ghana, the country rep, yes, he stated in his presentation that Ghana has made quite a number of commitments at the level of the UN to respect and to uphold the rights of gays, lesbians, etc. I want to know the exact nature of those commitments. Are they binding commitments under international law? Again, in an earlier presentation, I don't remember which of the presenters, but the point was made that there is no UN resolution on the question of LGBTQ plus rights.
As ambassadors for Christ.
Is that correct? Since you are the UN rep in this country, you are better positioned to give us a direct response. Is it correct? Is it correct?
Thank you. Point well made. Right. Our members, we will take 2 more interventions and then we'll ask the presenters to respond. But so far, I think we have been cautioned by the UN that Ghana, we have actually ratified a number of conventions. And to them, they believe that they conflict with some provisions of this bill conflict with that. And the bill, obviously, it must be some provisions. So I think we would have to go back and read what they have submitted to us, and then we'll see what. But we thank them for their education now. If there is any clarity, we would ask them to actually help us. Honorable Asla would want to make an intervention after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the first presentation by Advocates for Christ, you indicated that there is no gay gene. Is there a straight gene? If there is no gay gene, is there a straight gene or there is no straight gene? I want some clarity on that as well. You also indicated that there's nothing fundamental or inherent, etc., about sexual preferences or choices. Does that only relate to the choice to be gay or straight, the choice to be gay or lesbian, or the choice to be straight? I also want clarity about that. If there's no fundamental or innate or inherent, nothing fundamental, innate or inherent about sexual preferences or choices, I would presume that it cuts across all sexual preferences or choices, whether by the minority or the majority. I would want some clarity about that as well. And then thirdly, why should a sexual choice or preference be criminalized? I'd also want an answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rankin. Okay. So we'll call on the ambassadors for Christ to respond first, after which we'll call the advocates for Christ. Right.
So the XY chromosome, which indicates you are male, the XX, which indicates you are female, indicate a binary system. Now beyond that, the data on the genome project research, which I talked about, 500,000 individuals, shows that sexual preferences really are related to environment and culture, 75%. And in our context, obviously, because our environment and culture is what is predisposing our current position. It's the same reason why you find that in one jurisdiction, polygamy is not accepted, but here, polygamy is accepted. So the context of the people matter to the choices that you see. No, it's not me. I'm just quoting the science.
My question is, you stated that there is no gay gene. Is there a straight gene? That's the question. It has nothing to do with culture or environment.
Oh, so you don't want me to go and elaborate? I mean,
No.
I didn't realize I was not answering your question.
No. You stated categorically.
So have I
that-
answered?
No. Please, we're not having a banter, please. You stated that there is no gay gene. Is there a straight gene? That's the question. If you're saying that your sexual preference is dictated by your environment or your social circumstances or whatever, it cuts both ways.
Yes, nobody's disputing that.
Yes, so there is no gay gene. There is no straight gene. That's what you're saying in effect.
Yes, insertion.
Thank you.
No, but why are you fighting me? I mean, I just made a simple answer. I don't understand the position. I'm just answering the question.
With all due respect, I am not fighting you.
No, I don't like the posture. I mean, I don't understand why it's as if I said A, you said B. But anyway, what's the second question?
I am not fighting you. I am asking a question that elicits
And I was just
a
answering.
simple answer.
Well, I've given my answer.
The answer is there is no gay gene. There is no straight gene. I'm satisfied with that. Let's not make any value judgments either way. This is the way I talk. Everybody who knows me knows that. Yes. Thank you.
I'm quite sure.
You wanted to know the next question you asked?
My next question is, you indicated that there's nothing fundamental in it, inherent, and a whole host of other adjectives about sexual preferences or choices. Sexual preferences or choices either for the minority or the majority. Is that right?
Yes, that's what the president.
Thank you. And then why then should a sexual preference or choice be criminalized, in your opinion?
Why then should a sexual preference?
If there is nothing fundamental, innate, or inherent about a sexual preference.
Because the cultural context.
Please.
Sorry, go ahead.
You asked the question. Let me finish.
No, I didn't ask. You asked.
I asked the question. You sought clarification. I'm giving it to you.
Okay.
Kindly let me complete.
Please proceed with the clarification.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Why should a sexual preference or choice be criminalized if there's nothing fundamental in it or inherent about it, whether for the minority or the
I
majority?
answered that. So let me give it again. That's where you were cutting me when I was trying to be elaborate. Because the data shows, and I probably should project it again, the data shows that more than 75% of what contributes to the choices is the environment, the culture. So what happens is this. If you went to the UK and you said you wanted to practice polygamy, there'll be a hue and cry. But you come to Ghana and Africa, that is what is acceptable. So it is society, and that is good law.
I think you are missing the issue. But please, it is not other countries that are practicing gayism and lesbianism that we are talking about. It's happening in Ghana. Why are we attributing it to other countries?
Yes, so in Ghana, we are not accepting of that preference. That's it. In Ghana, we are not accepting. So I'm just expanding it for your understanding. In Ghana, as Ghanaians, our traditions support some values and don't support certain things. And as far as African civilization is concerned, this is the way to go. We will not go along with any Western civilization and notions.
My brother, just calm down. Don't.
No, I'm just speaking. This is also the way I speak. I'm
surprised
surprised she's squeezing her face. This is the way I speak, madam. Hello. Yeah, I can.
The example that we have given. My brother, the example that
value judgment, value judgment.
Adam,
Yes.
the example that we have given.
Yes.
I am with all force with you.
Absolutely.
Because we are talking about culture element here.
Absolutely.
And when you go to the European countries, their culture do not allow polygamy. However, Ghanaian culture allow polygamy.
Thank you.
I asked this question in an European country before. I was almost sure alive when I was telling them that they should also practice polygamy. It's not part of their culture. So in Ghana here, we are also bringing
our
culture
values
dimension into the whole thing. So the example that you have given, I'm in all force with you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah.
I
dispense to
differ.
Thank you.
With you,
Mr. Chair.
Why are the proponents, you can sit down. Why are the proponents of this bill trying to say that we need to pass this bill? It means that there are Ghanaians that are practicing, that are part of this community. And that's why we would want us to pass a law to control that. So it is in Ghana, and I wonder why we would want to take it that it is cultural. If it is cultural, then it's part of our culture because people are practicing it here. I mean, you don't need to go. Okay, let's call on the second presenters. The responses. Well, I would call on the Ghana AIDS Commission if you have something to respond to before we finally listen to the UN rep. Please.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. The first question asks about the consistency of the GAC's position or memo in relation to Article 21, so far as the provisions on public health and public interest are concerned. I would like to state categorically that our position and the memo are consistent with those provisions you referred to, and it is those provisions that we are advancing in our memo to support the point that this bill has to be given a second look in the context of public health. Because, one, the bill as it is now is going to drive persons involved in same-sex activities underground. And as we all know, they are disproportionately affected by HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases. It appears to me I am under the impression that the proponents of the bill think that by banning homosexual or LGBT activities will reduce or totally eliminate associated public health issues, but that is not true. I have given you the numbers. First is the fact that we have them in the country. I indicated that more than 54,000 men in this country aged 18 and above are homosexuals. This study was done in 2017. In 2011, when we did the second study, which covered, the 2017 one covered the entire country. The 2011 one covered only 6 regions in the country. And the estimated population of men who had sex with men was 31%. Just about that. Pardon? 31,000. Did I say percent? Oh, I'm very sorry. 31,000. Now, between 2011 and 2017, the number has grown to 54, almost 58,000. So, which means we have at least critical mass of MSM in the country with the potential for exponential growth of HIV in the country, because the prevalence clearly shows. And with the prevalence of 18% among MSM, if we do not do anything, and as we will see with this, the bill in its current form, if passed, will drive them underground. They will not access services, and it will mean that they will not benefit from the life-saving and treatment services that would ensure that they do not spread the virus in the country. We have shown also that 52% of them have female partners who serve as bridging population to spread the virus in the general population. So this is the public health sense of the whole discussion.
Thank you very much.
So it is not the other way around. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, countries that have passed similar laws are seeing growth in HIV and other infections. We have the data. We have presented the data. Oh, excuse me. Please.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I take cover? I take cover under you?
You have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Ignore those heckling.
So the data is quite loud and clear. And so we, as I started, I said that we are not here to argue for or against the bill. We are drawing attention to the fact that the bill needs some rework in the interest of public health in the country.
Yes.
That is all we are saying.
Sir, I think this point is well made, and it's very scary. If we have about 60,000 men involved in this, and as this bill is being proposed against them, we don't have any single one of them coming forward. I think he's convinced us enough, at least me, that if the bill is passed in its present form, they will go into hiding, and to him, it's but from what he's saying, it's a public health issue. Let us understand it, and if we have an interrogation to make based on the statistics that he's giving, we can ask questions and then we'll move forward. When we start at a committee level, we can then draw our conclusions. Rankin.
Chairman, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I want to ask this commission, what is your view about the fact that Section 104 of the Criminal Offences Act already prohibits homosexual activities because it's one of the unnatural carnal knowledge. Yet, they are coming forward for treatment. But in your case, it is only the passage of this bill that will let them go underground.
Oh. Honorable, I thought honorable member had the answer already. The fact that the Criminal Offences Act prohibits unnatural carnal knowledge, and yet we have growing numbers of MSM in Ghana, tells you that there are certain things you cannot control by law. Oh yes, I mean let's be frank about it. There are certain things you cannot control by law. If you are trying to so that's number 1 point. Number 2 is also the fact that they are, although the act the Criminal Offences Act prohibits unnatural carnal knowledge, and yet they are accessing services. But it's not all of them. It takes a lot of effort and resources to really get them because they are, we call them hard to reach populations. And we have to use their own kind, people among them who are willing and volunteer to help us to reach out to these people. Since the debate on this bill started, they have gone into hiding. They are being beaten all over the place. Some are even being, oh yes. And so we are not here to talk about all these things. What we are saying is that the evidence in other countries support, yes, the evidence in other countries where similar bills or laws have been passed show clearly that it is affecting public health because the numbers of HIV infections are going up. The second question about SHRAJ, it's not only SHRAJ, it's everybody who is involved. Because the act, in the interpretation, talks about allies. Now, if you do anything that helps LGBT, you are considered an ally under this bill. What does that mean for SHRAJ? It also requires that we report. And I have just told you that we use MSM to reach out to MSM. So those peer educators have already declared their status or whatever, that the identity, that they are MSM. And so by this law, if it is being interpreted, anybody can say that if we do not report such a person, then we are contravening the law. And these are the concerns we have. That is not the only thing. We have to train them. We have to bring them together and train them, give them the needed skills to be able to provide education and the necessary support, link them up to treatment centers so that they can access treatment. And in doing that, the law recognizes in that sense that we are promoting and advocating in support of LGBT activities. So these are the concerns we have. And we are not saying that don't pass the law or don't pass the bill or pass the bill. We are saying that be cautious and recognize that it has serious implications for our public health. And most of why you criminalize funding of LGBT activities. I have indicated, and Ghana doesn't have the resources. It will cost Ghana every year more than $106 million to carry out the national response every year. And government doesn't have that money. And so the choice is ours. If we say we are doing it, we are passing it as it is, then we should be aware that our partners will no longer be there to support us because we are criminalizing their funding. Okay, so we don't have a problem with that. We don't have a problem. Fortunately, Mr. Chairman, Parliament passes the appropriation bill, and it will give us more than $100 million every year to undertake the national
Thank you very much.
response.
I think the point is well made. I think my colleague would also want to ask.
But Mr. Chairman, if we will leave this document with you, this is the report of the 2017 study. We'll bring additional copies so that some of the misinterpretation of the data can be corrected. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. I just want you to clarify the statistics here for all of us. Now, you were saying that there is more of a public health hazard in the implications of this bill, if passed in its current form, than there is a public health imperative for passing it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You also indicated, if you were listening, that's the gist that I got from the presentation that he made. You also indicated that 52% of MSMs are bisexual. They have female partners. And about 72% of new HIV infections are from heterosexual sex, with 7% being from homosexual sex. Did I get it right?
Yes, when you compare sources of new infections, 72% coming from heterosexual sex and 7% coming from homosexual sex.
So the HIV is spread more through heterosexual sex than through homosexual sex. So if we're using that as the public health reason or rationale for considering the bill in its current form, then we've got the facts wrong. Is that what you're saying?
Honorable, exactly.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think you may sit down now. Thank you very much. Okay, so one more.
The essence of your presentation is that you are neither for nor against. Do I get that understanding? But your position is that in the event that we succeed with the bill, Ghana stands to lose in excess of $100 million in terms of funding from your donors who are pro-LGBT activities. Is that correct? Is that correct?
No, our donors are not pro-LGBT activities. Our donors are pro-public health. And so they give the money purposely for health. It has nothing to do with LGBT activities whatsoever. But it so happens that the beneficiaries of these services our donors support happen to be MSM. MSM means men who have sex with men. That's it. And they form a small proportion.
These are final clarifications.
Yes, they form
so your agency won't lose in excess of $100 million if you pass the bill into a law.
I'll come to that, Honorable. The MSM forms a very small proportion of people who receive the HIV and AIDS services in the country, majority are heterosexuals. Majority is heterosexual. And so we should not confuse the issues. Now, the last question. Donors are not giving us all the $100 million, but they are giving us the chunk of the money. With the fiscal limitations of our economy, we should be mindful in recognizing that if we lose donor funding, then the AIDS response, AIDS and TB response, of course, malaria as well, will be in jeopardy. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. I think we've listened to all the speakers. With the UN, sir, please come forward if you have some responses. But he just cautioned us, and the country rep said that Ghana had ratified a number of conventions, and therefore we must be cautious that we do not infringe upon the very conventions that we have. So, sir, we ready?
Good evening, and thank you.
We are not closed yet, please.
I will try to keep my comments brief, responding to some of them. The truth is that the breadth of the issues here are quite monumental, and I empathize with the committee on the size of the job that it has, and the Parliament on the size of the job, and wish them the best of luck. Our submissions came from no less than 5 agencies and 9 independent experts. Only one of them was available at the short notice that we had. Had we had more notice, I would have produced a bench similar to a football team to enable you to consider all the points. And you should bear in mind, therefore, my responses will be limited to the things that I have experience on, but as I've said, we'll continue to provide evidence into you on the range of matters. There was a question around the view on surgery carried out by adults in an informed and consensual way, and how that is different from surgery that is imposed upon people. And I think it's self-evident. The answer is that it is informed, it is consensual, and it is undertaken by an adult. The same person talked about the impact on teachers, and indeed spoke to the specifics of parents' liberties under existing treaty bodies, the liberty of parents to bring up their children in particular ways. I think the point being made is that the law, in so doing, will also infringe upon other people's liberties, including teachers, to be able to be involved in choosing to bring up their own children and or provide instruction in ways that are outside of a law that has made this restriction. So rather than actually enable liberties to be experienced by all, the bill could, and remember this is what we said, the bill could then constrain certain liberties. And so the balance is always making sure that in achieving your own rights, you don't infringe upon other rights. I think you've asked for a raft of evidence. There are close to 50 pages, and at least 4 of those pages are endnotes and footnotes. So the evidences abound in that document, and what we tried to do in the very short period made available to us was the opportunity to just summarize the key points. But I would refer, and I think it's been circulated, I would refer you all to that document in great detail, where a number of these points are made, and it's actually almost, it refers specifically to the clauses, and both in the treaty bodies as well as not. Just a point around, again, our purpose, and I reiterate that we provided an advisory, though I must say that Ghana is a member and co-owner of the United Nations. So this dialogue where Ghana is here and the United Nations is over there is probably a bit of a false dichotomy. Ghana is not only a member of ECOSOC, which is the governing body of the United Nations, but sits on the Security Council of the United Nations. So this attempt to separate the UN from Ghana, and Ghana has a very proud history of participation in the UN. And I think, so this attempt to separate the two is something that you know, it signed up to those treaty bodies. And I think just to comment on threats, we certainly don't believe in threats. In fact, let me tell you very clearly, the High Commissioner of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has specifically cautioned against sanctions and their impacts on human rights. And so that is how the UN approaches this particular matter. So I know that my colleague, Victor Madrigal, well, he's not my colleague, he's an independent expert. Victor Madrigal Bolos, who's one of the independent expert mandate holders, is available to provide additional clarifications on technical matters which I am not technically qualified to provide. I'm the resident coordinator coordinating the activities of 32 specialized agencies in Ghana. I cannot speak on behalf of all of those. If there are any other specific questions which are, I stand ready to respond to them. Thank you, Chairman. He is available. Technician.
Resident Coordinator of the United Nations agencies. Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the Commission and of Parliament, I just wanted to take a very brief opportunity to answer some of the technical aspects of questions in the context, of course, of my continued availability to provide evidence to the Honourable Parliament and to this Commission as they see fit. I'm very happy to be part of this dialogue. As the Resident Coordinator was very aptly saying, Ghana is a part of a system that has been shaped in the conviction that human rights, peace, security, and development are the common duty of all peoples and that we all participate in that endeavor. And I myself have the great honor of having and working with a lot of very distinguished Ghanaian independent experts and treaty members in this endeavor. I speak on the spirit of this advice and that implication. I thought it was very interesting, the references made to the recent study on the existence of a gay gene or not. And this study is issued by the university in which I am a researcher, so I have a little bit of knowledge as to not only the findings of the study, but also its limitations. And it is particularly important that we remind ourselves that the study ended up concluding that no particular markers are reliable enough to predict someone's sexuality, but that of course this was a study that had was carried out under significant limitations, including that the lion's share of the genomes utilized came from the UK Biobank Research Program and the consumer genetics company 23andMe. And therefore, the people who contribute the genetic and health information are predominantly of European ancestry and are on the older side. So finally, what the Harvard and MIT-based researcher cautioned precisely against simplistic use of the evidence that was produced by this study, and they demanded and advised that data that was much more comprehensive would be produced in relation to this. A number of the questions related to the idea of criminalization and the relationship of criminalization with protection of tradition and ancestral values. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring to the forefront in this conversation the fact that the evidence shows that the use of law to criminalize particular sexual orientation and gender identity is almost everywhere in the world connected to a story of colonialism. Most anthropological and societal studies, including in most of African cultures, demonstrate that traditional societies in Africa were more prone to acceptance and inclusion of diverse gender identities and sexual orientations than what colonial legislation imposed on countries through processes of colonialism was. And therefore, of course, this is the process of decriminalization that is occurring all over the world, because it is very much understood that criminalization through law is contrary to a host of international conventions and human rights standards. And Mr. Chairman, a question was raised to the effect of whether there are any specifically binding treaties. I would just like to point out that our joint submission that you have available to you points to no less than 9 universal treaties that are ratified by Ghana, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the Convention Against Torture, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the Convention on Elimination on All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and very importantly, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, all of which are quite in a concerning way implicated by dispositions of this draft bill. And on this, Mr. Chairman, I would like to bring to the attention of this Honorable Commission that our analysis carried out by my colleagues and I included very specific reference to each and every disposition in the draft legislation that was made reference to. And I believe that no disposition in the draft legislation was left out. And this, of course, to address the question by one of the honorable members in relation as to whether this related to specific disposition in the draft bill or was more of a general implication. I would direct the attention of the Honorable Commission and the Honorable Parliament to our advice, which goes in detail, disposition by disposition, in studying the implications of this draft legislation into a legal framework that I insist has been crafted with the active participation of Ghana. And I would like to make specific reference, Mr. Chairman, to 2 elements of which honorable members requested clarification. It is true that the Convention of the Right of the Child recognizes not only the right, but I would say the duty of parents to educate and shape their children in conformity with their potential and their ability to seek happiness. But it is important to remind that the Committee on the Rights of the Child, Mr. Chairman, has established that this duty is not absolute and has limits, such as corporal punishment, for example, and that it must be reconciled with principles such as the best interest of the child and the incremental capacity of the child to voice an opinion in relation to their best interest. So these are some of the complexities in which this bill goes in a rather concerning way for my colleagues and I. I would also like to say, Mr. Chairman, that there is a very well-developed framework for the right to freedom of religion and belief. I have the great honor of working together with my colleague, the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion and Belief, Mr. Ahmed Shahid, and I can assure you that there is very little contradiction between that right and the right to live free from violence and discrimination. Mr. Chairman, they are, as a matter of fact, interdependent rights, and they are both fundamented on the idea of the protection of human dignity, to which the draft bill actually creates some concerning issues. I'd like to finalize my intervention, Mr. Chairman, addressing the last question that I think has remained unaddressed, which is whether there is a specific resolution by the United Nations relating to the rights of LGBT persons to live free from violence and discrimination. And I tell you that in addition to the whole host of legal provisions that I've cited, there is, of course, Resolution 32.2 of the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, accompanied by Resolution 4118 of the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, which explicitly make reference to combating violence and discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and gender diverse persons. And they, of course, ascertain the right of these persons to live free from violence and discrimination, to live free from fear, to live free from criminalization. It is the case, Mr. Chairman, that the human rights of LGBTQI persons are human rights. There are no special rights to these persons. They enjoy the rights that their humanity give them, and most amongst them, the right to live free from violence and discrimination, and the right to have their dignity afforded. And that, of course, is also applicable to the tens of thousands of Ghanaians who are members of this community and have those rights. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and distinguished representatives.
We are extremely grateful for your contributions to the committee, and our friends from the media and the members that we had invited from the public, we are extremely grateful that you found time to come and share the knowledge you have with us. We appreciate every bit of it that you have given us. We haven't finished with the public hearing. There are other memoranda that we have received, but we are constrained with time, and we cannot predict what time we have to meet and continue. I think the Secretariat will work on that for us. Honorable members, friends of the committee, and members of the committee, throughout the day you've been here, especially the ministers amongst us, had been with us since morning till evening, in spite of their busy schedules, and we are extremely grateful. Ade Janta, I think our
media reportage. Chairman, the issue about procedural impropriety of the laying of the bill was settled by you. But it's been reported this afternoon that Speaker was wrong in laying the bill, and that was the headline. Yes, you see, and it's gone viral. So, as much as in here in-house, we knew that you settled the matter, and so we proceeded to deal and had other memos and discuss the matters dispassionately. So, going forward, we want to encourage the media to, as much as possible, to report. I saw it on my Joy Online. So, as much as possible, the reportage should be a true reflection of matters that are proceeding before the committee. I thank you.
I'm grateful. I want to add, our friends from the media. You see, we as parliamentarians, we want to be educated on this bill. We want to hear from for and against. I've also realized, and it's very much of concern to me, that the media is tilted towards one side, and they tend to ridicule any person that holds a view contrary to what you are doing. Indeed, you are the fourth organ of the state, and we cannot continue to be tilting the way we want things to go on our way. So please, everybody should be tolerant on this. We want to be educated, then we'll retire and go through this bill clause by clause. And I promise Ghanaians that we would pass a law that will stand the test of time. Thank you for coming. Rankin, if you have a comment, then you choose somebody, appoint someone.
Well, Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to make a brief remark. Let me add my voice to what you've already said, expressing gratitude to those who have come to educate us. I always maintain that we must have free and fruitful discussion. So if the media is going to misreport whatever happened at the committee, I believe it will deter people who are against or for the bill and has a useful information that will help the committee to actually pass a law that will regulate all of us. So let this be the first and the last. Chairman has indicated that the issue as to whether Article 108 is applicable is now moot because in the opinion of the person presiding, he has admitted it as a private member's bill and referred same to the committee. But this committee has never taken a decision that the Speaker has no right to admit the bill as a private member's bill. So that report is very unfortunate, highly unfortunate. So at the end of, I will urge you to go and do the honorable thing by way of retracting the wrong information that you have thrown to the public. We open this particular discussion so that you can pick the first-hand information from here. But that is not a liberty to go and send a wrong signal. Those who have come before the committee and have made valuable presentation to the committee can assure you that all your concerns will be taken into consideration when we are doing clause-by-clause consideration of the bill. Your memoranda will be a guide to the committee when we are looking at the bill. And after the bill is passed into law, in any event, you will be able to see your input being taken into account in ironing out the bill. So once again, thank you very much for coming and taking the trouble to spend the whole day with us. We are indeed very grateful to you. Thank you.
Honorable Dominica Ine is praying for us.
Are you allowed to?
He's a staunch Catholic. Honorable, I think I heard that you are a disappointed priest. Let's hear you.
Chairman, I haven't heard that one. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord our Father, we thank you very much. At the beginning of these proceedings, we invoked your name. We invited you to be in our midst as we deliberate on these important matters affecting our country. We are grateful that you guided us through this, and we hope that everything that we have heard today, all the deliberations